if you look at the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament, it doesn't matter whether it's the the God in the sky of the Old Testament or Jesus in the New Testament. It's the common through line all the way from the beginning to the end of the book is obedience. And I think that that's really interesting when it comes to understanding the role that Abrahamic religion has had in Western society through like over the course of just history in general. Because if you believe that authority is your highest good, if authority is kind of put on the throne in your mind, of like this is what life is all about, or that no matter what I do, submission to authority is kind of like the highest good. Then that because religion trains you to be that way, it reinforces all sorts of earthly power structures.
Hello everyone, I'm Pammy from the Psychedelic Sisterhood. I'm with my friend Julia, and we're going to talk about Julia's amazing experience with
Psilocybin mushrooms.
Psilocybin mushrooms we're going to talk about. Julia and I have been chatting already. And before we wanted to give away all of our goodies, we're going to start.
Yeah, my name is Julia Rhodes, and I grew up in Virginia, went to college in New York, right near New York City, and that is where I first encountered psychedelics. And the first psychedelic that I ever encountered was LSD. I did about 4 trips over the course of 2 years, and during that time, experienced a decided shift where I was raised as a Christian my whole life, and that was kind of the main role that that my first psychedelic experiences played in my life, actually, was kind of getting me kind of outside of my old religious mindset and getting me to question that and step out into new experience or new perspectives. But more importantly, I think right after my old foundation, my old sense of reality and sense of self was deconstructed, I felt like that kind of laid a foundation on which, when I discovered psilocybin mushrooms back in 2019, that allowed me to build this new self. After my old self was deconstructed, it allowed me to discover my gender, the fact that I was trans. That was something that I figured out, or I had been figuring out for a while, but really wasn't able to accept until I had my first mushroom trip in the fall of 2019. And I went to college studying film, and during that same trip, I gained a new sense of confidence in my filmmaking career. I gained a new sense of a sense that as I was watching movies while doing mushrooms, I could see things about movies that I had never seen before and realized I have a unique perspective here. And I believe strongly enough in this unique perspective to believe in to believe in myself, to believe in this, to have this vision of a potential filmmaking career in front of me. And so that's basically me. Is I want to be a movie director, and so graduated from college, lived with family for a bit. Then strange set of bizarre and complicated circumstances brought me out to Michigan, and now I'm living in Ann Arbor. And of course, because of how life-changing psychedelics were for me, in a positive way, I wanted to get involved with activism, wanted to get involved in the efforts towards legalization and decriminalization. And because of that, I tried to join up with various psychedelic groups during 2020, when I thought that I was moving to New York. That's how I got in touch with Pammy.
Yeah.
And after that, I realized, oh, I'm not living in New York. I'm not going to live in New York for a while. I think Michigan's my home now, so
Mm-hmm.
I've started to get in touch with the local Michigan psychedelic community, and just getting involved in their efforts towards decriminalization there. And Ann Arbor is really at the forefront in that.
They really are. Yeah.
Ann Arbor decriminalized psychedelic plants in September of late September of 2020. I did not find out that they had done this until after I moved to Michigan and
What a
got and
surprise.
I was halfway moving into Ann Arbor. I was halfway here when I found out. I was like, oh, things are lining up. Things are lining up. It's destiny. It's a sign.
What better sign do you need than that?
Yeah.
You don't have to sneak
Absolutely.
anything. You don't have to hide
Oh yeah, I know.
anything.
It's like a red carpet's like been paved for me. It's like I
Welcome, take
really
it
do
all.
feel like Michigan. I feel like what happens in Ann Arbor is like a test run. It's like a beacon of light for like what could happen in the rest of Michigan. And what happens in Michigan could be a beacon of light for what happens in the rest of the country.
Yeah.
And you know, and I really feel like I'm in like talking about it like a place to be in where one is like ideally situated. And I'm not just talking about psychedelics. I'm talking about like everything. I'm talking about like, you know, just political social change in general. And it's been that way historically. I mean,
Really?
yeah, Ann Arbor has a really interesting and rich history with social activism and student protests just all throughout the 20th century. So it's really uniquely situated. And I believe that you know, if you live in Ann Arbor and you can like, you know, change things here, it's like I think it can have a ripple effect. You can end up changing the world. But
yeah, for sure.
That's how I feel. That's how I feel living here.
That's not a sound bite and a half. That's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I honestly I'm not really well versed with Ann Arbor, but like I I
Yeah.
guess the social change that they have there, like has anything that they've done besides legal decriminalize psychedelics, or is it decriminalized or legalized?
Decriminalize.
Decriminalize.
And there's an important difference there too, is because with legalization, you end up with what's going on with weed right now, where
The MARTA in New York. Yes, I just did an event on that.
it's very regulated. It's all, you know, very approved, you know, in stores and everything. The whole point of decriminalization, and why they're pushing for decriminalization instead of legalization, is because with decriminalization, it's still unregulated, but you just can't be prosecuted for it. You can't be arrested or bothered about it. And the point of that is that this community is kind of envisioning a future where instead of mushrooms and similar substances being controlled by the pharmaceutical companies that are going to want to, because of the mental health effects of psilocybin, because these companies are going to want to use this medicine to treat mental health, but they're going to want to turn it into medicine and regulate it. We don't want these pharmaceutical companies to ruin it, basically, in the way that big pharma tends to ruin things. And so I think as a result of that, we don't want them to have a monopoly on this plant, is that we're trying to use decriminalization and to encourage a future of psilocybin where it's people growing it in their own homes and in their own backyards and sharing it with each other, you know, as much as they want freely, and giving it. And but the thing is that with decriminalization, you can't sell it. You can't become like a drug lord of mushrooms or anything. So we're kind of encouraging in this reality where it's people growing and people teaching each other to grow, and just freely giving it to each other. And so that's kind of that future where, yes, you know, there will be medical companies that are going to medicinalize and take the psilocybin and, you know, turn it into you know,
the synthesize.
yeah, medicine for people's mental health. But as that's
Yeah.
going on, there's also going to be this community of growers, you know, sharing it with each other and
Mm.
guiding each other through the more recreational and spiritual aspects of the substance,
Mhm.
and you know, having um, these community events with each other, because it does bring people together,
For sure.
and that's the other aspect of it that intrigues me.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they're not trying to go the compass route and try to make like fuzzy couches and chill rooms, try to make patents for those, then I guess I'm all for it. Of
Yeah,
course, I'm not all for big pharma, but I mean, I think what will get things to be decriminalized like that is, all we all want,
yeah,
honestly. And I like that you brought that up, the legalization and the decriminalization difference, because that is exactly what's happening in New York right now with weed.
hmm,
Um, it seems like you need a license for everything. You need a
yeah,
license to grow. You need a license to smoke. You need a license to, sell. And
hmm,
then what is that, the term where you can like grow, gift, or share or whatever, like in order to do that, in order to just grow in your backyard and just share with your friend, like that will take an extra amount of time, and that's not necessarily going to be approved
yeah,
at least 18 months from now. I think that's about
yeah.
the time. So it's not like today, it's a
Hmm.
year and a half from now. So
I guess the reason I feel good about Ann Arbor is because I feel like if I was living in New York City, uh, I would be so intimidated by how big everything is. And and like I like that. I'm drawn to bigness, but at the same
yeah.
time I feel like I can I can make more of a change here because the city is smaller, and
True.
because
Yes.
things you know, because city council is something that feels closer to me here, is
Mm-hmm.
that they it's there's like a newspaper that they'll like put like it's like a city that has one newspaper, and then they put the newspaper in your mailbox and you read it, and it's like, oh, here's everything that's going on, here's the decisions that city
Wow.
council is making. And
That
so
does
I
feel,
read the news.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really quaint. It's this quaint like small townish kind of city.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's at the same time it feels like really like of the future. I'm reading, and it's and we're at this like unique point here where we actually have a more progressive council
Mm-hmm.
than most. And
Mm-hmm.
so there's a lot of developments that are going to be happening soon, but also there's a commitment to there are people in positions of power right now in the city that actually are invested and care a lot about getting Ann Arbor carbon neutral within
Mm-hmm.
10 years. And by 2030, they are saying, okay, we have this same kind of pride, like this hometown pride, and we want to, you know, be that beacon of light for the rest
Mm-hmm.
of the world and show everyone, hey, you can, you know, we can go green. We can go green
Mm-hmm.
not just as a personal decision for you and your house, but as a city,
That's
we can
incredible.
try and do that,
I love that.
because it's in the entire name. Like this is Tree Town. It's
Mm.
the town of trees. And so, you know, planting trees like and building skyscrapers like at the same time, like that's us. And so yeah,
Nice.
that's the vision.
Oh my gosh. Let me find out. I'm gonna visit Ann Arbor.
Hmm.
Let me sleep on your couch,
I'd love to
okay?
have you. Yeah.
All right, so let's switch over to oh, tell me about your first trip. I'm
The
very
first
curious.
LSD trip or the first mushroom trip?
Hmm. You decide.
I mean, I think the first mushroom trip was the more important one for me, because that was
Okay.
the one where, I mean, with the first LSD trip, that was mainly just like realizing, okay, everything that I'm experiencing is just what I perceive. That
Mm-hmm.
I think beforehand I had this idea of like objective reality,
Mm-hmm.
like you're like where you're watching. I was watching my life in third person from that point
Mm-hmm.
forward. Sorry, from that point back. Up until that point, I was kind of watching my life almost as you watch characters in a movie, sort
Mm-hmm.
of, where you try and like see this like larger picture, because it was. I think that was just how it's how we're conditioned. Like you're shown that things are a certain way, people tell you that things are a certain way, and so you kind of
Oh, you form that.
you
Yeah.
you get into the community mind, really, and so you're kind of seeing yourself in relation to these other external objects, and everything is very like very material. And then I kind of made this shift from materialism to kind of immaterialism, where instead of everything being matter, I started to realize, oh, actually everything is mind, because everything is just um, you know, that whole thing of like a tree falling in the forest. Like I believe that
Yeah.
if the tree falls in the forest and no one's around to hear it, it actually doesn't make a sound, because everything is just perception.
I see. I see.
Everything is just because if it's not perceived, I does it really exist?
Doesn't
I think
exist.
something has to be perceived to exist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, like I just realized that was my universe. My universe was what I was able to perceive. And but I don't want to like say that in a way that kind of like elevates the individual like subjective perceiver to like a godlike position of like it's all just about me, it's all just about, you know, my
My
subjective
perception. Blah
perception.
blah. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's not that. It's more,
Mm-hmm.
once you realize that everything that you think you know, your entire world, is just the information that you've been taking in, that actually puts you in this humbling position of
Mm-hmm.
realizing how much how limited your subjective
Yeah.
perspective is, and how subjective it can be. How you can look at a room and you can say, oh, like this room is really big, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because that's the kind of thing that you experience when you're in LSD. It's like like my apartment is huge, but then you'll like, you know, turn around, it's like, whoa, it's actually really tiny. And it
Mm-hmm.
just kind of depends on how you're thinking and how you're feeling at the moment. And it's this really silly simple thing, but you realize, oh, if my brain can make this much of a change just based on this small thing, like
Mm-hmm.
how many other subjective judgments am I making about reality that are really just down to how I'm feeling? Where I first like got pushed out of my old shell, and I think the what really drew me to it, and what really kind of made me like fall in love with that whole experience, was just the
Mm-hmm.
fact that it was so out of the ordinary, that it was so like I really believe that there's this like magical quality to the
Mm-hmm.
psychedelic experience, where you're most every day you're just in the normal world, but then you go into this like abnormal state, and
Mm-hmm.
there's something very like mystical about that. A transcendent
Yeah.
is the
Yeah.
word. And that's the transcendent element of the psychedelic experiences, I think, um like a core element to me when I think about it, and when I think about like how I want to discuss it and how I want to write about it and talk about it. And in my and for me, with and this is I'm jumping into my fifth experience here,
Okay.
and my experiences afterwards, is the common through line of everything, um the common through line of my psychedelic story and of my movies story,
Mm-hmm.
is the religious element of psychedelics, which
Mm-hmm.
I feel almost everyone that I talk to knows about it, but I think because of this cultural hesitancy to talk about religion,
Mm-hmm.
even in psychedelic communities, I feel like there's this hesitancy to talk about the religious element.
It's more so
And yeah,
spirituality instead of religion.
well,
I
but that's the thing is that I
see.
was a religion minor in college,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
and I one of the things that kind of came to me in that religion minor, like that they talked about, is that the in the religious studies department, religion is, it's a very very difficult term to define, but during my religious studies I came to define it as simply just that entire area. The entire area of religion and spirituality kind of falls under
Mm-hmm.
the religion umbrella, whereas I think people I think in the common non-academic world, when they hear the word religion, they think of organized religion.
Oh, I
But I
see.
I think disorganized religion is still religion. It's just disorganized. Like spirituality is
Mm.
it's engaging in spirituality outside of any religious structure. you're still doing something religious.
Mm-hmm.
You're just doing it in your own way, I think.
I guess
And
technically anything with a,
yeah.
I guess with a regimen or,
Hmm.
a kind of thing like that, it would be religious to you, or maybe only
Yeah.
you. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, and this is just an amateur religious scholar's like opinion, I guess, that my personal definition for religion at this point has become whatever your reason is for living
Mm-hmm.
is your religion. And so anything that you do that is related to your reason for being here, anything that's deeply close to your source of personal meaning,
Mm-hmm.
for existence, that is religious, in my opinion. And I feel like the that's why the transcendent experiences, I think, are inherently religious, because the when something is transcendent, it takes you beyond the
Mm-hmm.
ordinary. And when you go beyond the ordinary, you're forced to confront yourself, and you're forced to confront your own position within a larger picture. And
Mm-hmm.
that automatically makes you think about meaning and significance, your own meaning and significance within that picture. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's why these transcendent experiences are religious, is because they're taking you, and they are um, enabling you to think about, and maybe not even come to an answer, but at least ask questions about that larger picture. I think transcendent experiences make us question
Yeah, for sure.
our relationship with the beyond.
And I think that's the difference, at least for me, from my perspective, the difference with, religion and psychedelics is it allowed me to question everything. Whereas, like you said, you grew up Christian, so did I. I was not
Yeah.
allowed to question everything. So I guess in a sense, psychedelics became my new religion. Like I definitely regained a lot of like spirituality, back spirituality from there. And
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. But there's got to be something to be said about that first mode of shifting perspective. Like if that's not like the baptismal, you know,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah. It's like that first experience. There's like a
mm-hmm,
rite of passage kind of element to it. And but then if that was like my if my first experience was my entry into transcendence, like
mm-hmm,
the fifth experience was kind of like my first mushroom experience was this kind of moment of becoming, of like being given a name,
mm-hmm,
and a role and a identity. And but I think also that's when I kind of start, because my first four psychedelic experiences were about deconstruction of my old religion,
mm-hmm,
whereas every psychedelic experience that I've had after that has been about the construction of this new religion that I've kind of been creating through these experiences, for myself. But at the same time, it's really not new.
mm-hmm,
I've realized that I think we had a conversation back in September, where I was talking about it. I was like, oh man, if only, like, if only we could take like all of the like deep insights that we get from these experiences, or if only we could honor and respect the beauty and the mysticality of these experiences, and turn
mm-hmm.
that, into something that resembled a religion, so that there was an option of a structure there to kind of guide newcomers through it.
Yeah.
And I, at first I was really intimidated by that concept, because I feel like no one really wants that. No one, like, I feel like no one wants a new religion. Because it's just that that's a scary thing now. It's a scary thing, like when someone comes along and says, it's like, oh God,
Mm-hmm.
I've got a new religion, because it's like, okay, well, you're just a cult leader. And I'm like, no, I just don't, like, I don't, that's not really what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather, but because I've realized that these ideas that I'm encountering during these experiences are not really new ideas. They're
Mm-hmm.
old ideas. They're ideas that have been around since the dawn of time. They're just ideas that have been kind of pushed to the sidelines by dominant Western culture for a while. And the and that's why I was really drawn to Hinduism for a time,
Mm-hmm.
because I I felt that the ideas within the Vedas and the Upanishads, they they really reflected these epiphanies about the nature of the self in relationship to the universe that I was discovering. And I realized, okay, if I'm discovering this just now, you know, without any kind of like guidance, and this was some, you know, just through the psychedelic experiences, and these were things that these you know, ancient masters were discovering 3,000 years ago, this must be something universal. This must be something that any conscious being could discover, whether you're on Earth or whether you're on some other planet halfway across the galaxy. Because, and if that's the case, then that's what I want to believe. That's what that's what I want my like religion to be. But I think the problem with Hinduism for me is that I just couldn't see like getting a bunch of like American friends into it, because it's this other culture. It has its own aesthetics, and I don't know, I felt like I was stealing it when I tried to get into it. And so I told myself, I need to get into something that has these ideas, but has a different aesthetic, that has an aesthetic that isn't so heavily associated with a very specific time and place, and that has, you know, more of this amorphous like quality to it. And when so in my fifth experience, I realized that an aesthetic that I was very drawn to was this kind of like this witchy aesthetic, this like kind of like this aesthetic of like, you know, like hats and cauldrons and that sort of thing. Like I was having fun with it, but that's it. And so when at first I was like, okay, like, you know, I really like witches. Am I a Wiccan? And I was asking myself that question for a little bit. But then I after a while, I realized in my first experience in Ann Arbor, when I came here, this whole question of like, what is this like new religion that I'm trying to build and that I'm trying to construct? That question got answered, and I was sitting here and I was doing my trips like I usually do, and then it basically came to me, it's paganism, basically. But I think the reason that it took me so long to kind of come to that answer is because right now it's like paganism is really scattered. It's all these different like groups believing in all these different things. But I think the other thing is that paganism isn't it's really, it feels a lot like a hobby to me. Like when I see like, I don't know, just how it looks like from a PR kind of image standpoint right now, it looks very much like, okay, like you're into crystals and you're into like astrology, and you know, and you're really into you know, like the costume and the ritual of this like past culture that you're trying to revive. But I think that it's I think that it could be something so much more than that. I think that if we really kind of woke up to how powerful the philosophical idea at its center is, of choosing to see the physical and the spiritual world as the same thing, then I think it could become a much more powerful movement. I think especially if we had the freedom to realize, because this is the thing, is that we have so much of this old thinking about how religion needs to be, because I mean, you were talking about it, the association between religion and this organized structure, and the reason that association is there is because if you look at the three like major Abrahamic religions, they're all worshiping the same God. But I believe that God, and this just kind of gets into like the philosophy of like, what is a God, you know, question mark, because there's yeah, I mean, because there's lots of different gods. That's the thing, is that you know, if you get into the pagan mentality, you know, you realize, okay, there's one God, but that God is so abstract that you can't really define or put a name or a face to that. So you have to understand that abstract being through a variety of different faces, because sometimes God is love, and so you want to understand God that way. But sometimes time is God, sometimes death can be a god. So life and death, are both different faces of God. And beauty is a face of God. Desire, there are so many forces, in this world that a person could become drawn to and see that force as being divine, to an extent where for one person, they might say it's like, well, I'm very drawn to beauty, so beauty is going to be my god, and my life is going to be all about appreciating and celebrating beauty. Or another person, might say, okay, well, I believe that wisdom is God, so my life is going to be all about appreciating and celebrating and trying to be the wisest person that I can be. So there's all these different virtues that I think that I think like virtues are like aspects of divinity that I think people can appreciate. And so
can they all those parts
what
be part of the same?
That of course, yeah, absolutely. I guess what I'm trying to say is that once you get into that mindset of seeing each different like virtue as like a different face, of the same being, then you look back at Christianity and you kind of start to realize that the God that is being worshipped there is really one specific face of the many different possible faces. And you start to understand that if over here we have beauty and wisdom and love, or whatever, that like what is the nature of the face? What is the nature of the personality of God that's being worshipped in these religions? And really, it's authority. It's really the idea that there is some kind of higher authority that must be obeyed. And so if you look at the Bible, both the Old and the New Testament, it doesn't matter whether it's the God in the sky of the Old Testament or Jesus in the New Testament. It's the common through line all the way from the beginning to the end of the book is obedience. And I think that that's really interesting when it comes to understanding the role that Abrahamic religion has had in Western society through like over the course of just history in general. Because if you believe that authority is your highest good, if authority is kind of put on the throne in your mind, of like this is what life is all about, or that no matter what I do, submission to authority is kind of like the highest good, then that because religion trains you to be that way, it reinforces all sorts of earthly power structures. It's interesting that that he's called the Lord. I mean, the original Hebrew, the original word for God in ancient Canaan, Baal, it was a word that originally was meant to reference an earthly king. So there's this. I think there's this relationship between.
Why not paganism? Why?
I'm guessing, like, I guess what I'm saying is that we're so like there. I think earthly power structures have an interest, in maintaining a religious perspective that trains people and reinforces the people's comfort with earthly power, with the existence of earthly power structures. But I mean, that's like, I'm like bottom of Marinus Trench right now, like that, like how far this tangent has gone. But I guess where I'm bringing that back to is that like people are so used to religion being all about authority, because the most dominant religions in this country worship authority as their god. So when people branch out of that and try to do paganism, there's that spirit of authority, I think, can still influence things. And so people, will say, it's like, like I, in order to be a good practitioner of this religion, I still have to be, submissive to the authority of tradition. Like I have to pay attention to tradition, if I want to be like all good and religious. And
Mm-hmm.
so like I feel like a lot of pagans get like caught up and obsessed in, trying to revive this and that tradition, in an
Like the
effort to be a
old
good pagan. But
history of.
I feel like we're living in a really multicultural America, and I think that in that there could be a new paganism that could come up
Mm-hmm.
that is really heavily influenced by all sorts of different pagan traditions. Like, what would it look like if it kind of came together?
Mm-hmm.
What would it look like if you had a paganism that was kind of a common ground for people that were interested in this, in the Celtic aesthetic or the Norse aesthetic? Because the aesthetic doesn't matter. It's the idea that it's nature that's divine that really matters. And so there could be like the aesthetic could be anything. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what's
Absolutely.
really interesting for me. But I think what's really interesting for me is the fact that psychedelic experiences are a way to deliberately, or to, in a controlled way, um, go out of the ordinary and into the extraordinary and into that transcendent realm. And that's a religious thing. And like the core idea of paganism being the union between the physical and the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Psychedelics are a physical substance
Yeah.
that produces a spiritual result, and so
Mm-hmm.
that union is right there in them. And so once you experience that and come into contact with that, you start to realize, okay, like this is a sacred object here that I'm
Mm-hmm.
interacting with. This is a sacred experience that I'm having. And I think that people becoming more interested in paganism and people becoming more interested in psychedelics,
Mm-hmm.
it's there's a lot of common threads, and I feel like that's about to converge like really soon.
Yeah.
I feel
It's
like
not an
at
accident.
some point, there's going to be like religious rituals kind of, constructed and developed um by new pagan religious movements
Oh, this is
surrounding,
already happening. This is
yeah,
already happening.
like surrounding like how to have like a mushroom trip or a weed trip in
Mm-hmm.
a pagan religious
In a religious
setting.
setting.
But
Yeah, for
what
sure.
where I'm kind of trying to step in that process is to, say like, okay, whatever gets developed, it doesn't have to be uniform. You
Mm-hmm.
want to have it tailored to whatever your local community vibes with. And even within that local community, like, whatever you and your partner or you and your smaller group of friends, feels the most comfortable doing. I want to, encourage anyone who is like in these circles and who is feeling that they're a part of this movement to embrace the freedom to shape and the freedom to experience the spiritual, in whatever way that they, in whatever way that they want to. Because the whole point of I think the whole point of the stigmatization of these things,
Mm-hmm.
to begin with, is to control
Absolutely.
how people access the spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're if you're branching out and exploring all these different possibilities, and saying to yourself, it's like, okay, well, how can we come up with one way to do this?
Mm-hmm.
You still have that impulse to control. So
Yeah,
I
that's
guess what I'm saying is,
important.
how can we like acknowledge the
Mm-hmm.
sanctity, and acknowledge the need to view it as important enough that we view engaging with it as
Mm-hmm.
something that's parallel to a religious ritual, without um over over regulating it, or you know
Yeah, I know, but that's the
overdoing it on that
difficulty
front.
now is
Yeah.
because I see some groups wanting to kind of put a structure together for the psychedelic community and wanting to be like, well, we want to put together, like, say, a guide, and this is how we should do it, and this is what accepted, and this is what's not accepted. And I can understand where it comes from because there's a
Yeah.
lot of leeway for, a lot of unsavory people to,
Yeah.
kind of take advantage. And there's also I can also see where it becomes too almost like I don't know, what Soul Cycle. You know what I mean? Like they get too dogmatic about what the right way to do things are. And granted,
Yeah.
like when it comes to like, obviously when it comes to like ayahuasca, peyote and things like
Hmm.
that are come
Oh
from
yeah. If
tribes,
there's a
it's
pre-existing ritual, then yeah, I'm not a complete iconoclast. Like I'm not like a complete like
yeah.
okay, like because if it's a marginalized community that's trying to
Mhm.
maintain a tradition, that's a little
Mhm.
bit different
Yeah, I
than,
wasn't going to
being
say
someone
that.
that has a mild interest in paganism and,
Mhm.
thinks, okay, I have to do things exactly as the ancient Romans did.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm totally there with you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, and what I do like a little bit of structure because I do sometimes
Hmm.
know what I'm getting into, but also I don't want it to be so rigid where I
Yeah.
can't have build my own, out of it.
I feel like the importance of structure actually is to create a feeling of reverence,
Mm-hmm.
is to like if you start doing things before and after like each one of your trips, like if you start to
We definitely
if
have a ritual for sure.
yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
if you create a ritual, then like there's this feeling of specialness.
Mm-hmm.
There's this feeling of like I'm doing something, towards which, there is some degree of like reverence, and I'm in
Mm-hmm.
like a special spiritual space at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really important. And I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not trying to like come up with rules for how everyone should trip. But
You're like, listen, this is what we're doing.
what I am trying to do is encourage people to start thinking about psychedelics as a religious thing, and to
Mm-hmm.
encourage people to play with that.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
yeah,
here's
that's
so
kind of where I am.
here's the weird thing about psychedelics now.
Yeah.
Um, Especially the ones that come from indigenous tribes. Like they
Yeah.
were given as, as healing modalities to, if you had something going on, the shaman or the, doctor, I guess, of the village would, use it to assess what the damage was and ask spirits and ancestors to suss it out in some cases. And also some were used as initiation. So
Hmm.
it's like I find it bizarre. Like us as Westerners, we're just like, yeah, give it all to my face all the time. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
because the reference is a little bit lost. Not with everyone, but with some people, it's lost. But at the same time, it's like something that used to be a rite of passage is like every weekend, and I find that so
Yeah.
crazy. You know what I
It's well,
mean?
not like yeah, and I'm trying to avoid that. I'm trying to avoid that like every weekend thing.
Oh no, I've been
Like,
there. I've been
and
there for sure.
I'm trying to, yeah, where like um for me actually I found like a month and a half is actually pretty great, because
Mm,
that's in the pagan calendar, or at least like kind of in the I don't know if it came from Wicca or where it emerged, but like somewhere in those circles,
mm,
this idea of like the wheel of the year became really popularized.
mm.
And it's the summer solstice, the spring equinox,
Oh
and the fall
yeah.
equinox. So those four
Those are definitely golden.
astronomical
Yeah.
events, and then the four kind of in between that. And so you have I really really am drawn to that
Mm-hmm.
as I think something that I think could really works for me, and I think could work for a lot of people looking for a structure
Mm-hmm.
to kind of guide their psychedelic experiences, because a month and a half is a lot can happen, in that period of
Mm-hmm.
time. But also all the way that Christian holidays are kind of structured is it's all like anniversaries of like specific events,
Yeah.
as opposed to celebrating a natural event that happens at the same time every year.
Oh yeah, maybe on a
And
different day or different month.
yeah, yeah, and I guess what I'm saying is that like it's the there's it's so nice to like have all your holidays evenly spaced apart, I guess. Like, because it's like you know exactly how long you're waiting until the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And you start to like view your life in terms of like, okay, what's going to happen in this month and a half chunk of my life. Like it's so
Mm-hmm.
much
I
easier to
see.
keep track of,
I
as
see.
opposed to a year. Like so much happens in a
More
year.
structure.
um so I guess what I'm saying is like I think once every like month and a half is a really comfortable rhythm for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but that's I don't know if that would work well for everyone, but
Ooh,
it's, I think
yeah.
the fact that like I'm aligning it with a structure in which those holidays are considered religious, like, it's like, okay, like, I'm part of a system in which, we can celebrate religious holidays like this often.
Yeah.
And so it still feels kind of special and reverent, but like it's also like I'm not waiting too long for the next one, and like it's like,
Yeah.
oh, like I have like a fun thing to look forward to that's not too far away.
Yeah,
and
true.
and
Yeah.
then like I still have weed for the weekends, like
That's
just in
true.
between. So like I feel like that's like a really nice rhythm. And like I'm just like, thinking about like, wow, like if I was like in a community like where everyone kind of did this, like that would be so chill. Like,
That would be, and it would
yeah.
be like an inadvertent, not like a holiday, but it would just be like a mini celebration, like a celebration of life, honestly. Like, oh, we're
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
this thing where we can all come together and appreciate everything, appreciate each other.
Yeah, yeah.
But do you have a mushroom ritual?
I do. I it feels weird going as in detail about it on like a podcast,
Oh,
but
sorry.
yeah.
If it's too
Oh,
like
no,
if
no,
it's
no.
too
I mean,
scary.
I watch movies because
Um,
that's my path in life. I'm a very
mm,
like I but to preface that, I actually believe that the spiritual, like the thing about psychedelics is that um they definitely have a reputation for being recreational.
mm-hmm.
And in my discovery of them as this spiritual religious substance, I have found it difficult to defend them as a spiritual religious substance without distancing them from the recreational side, which I
Mm,
don't want to do, because within within a lot of spiritual traditions, like the spiritual and the recreational are kept separate. But
mm,
what I loved about the psychedelic experience and about the paganism that I kind of discovered through that was how the recreational became spiritual,
mm,
and vice versa. And so that's kind of really where I'm at, where I'm kind of thinking, okay, like what if the entire like cosmos or whatever exists so that the consciousness that exists within it can work towards happiness, or work
mm.
towards pleasure or enjoyment of life, which sounds which sounds so ludicrous, to so many
Honestly,
people,
yeah, to
because
so many people, maybe, yeah.
because like it sounds so ludicrous to so many people because of how miserable things are. I mean, people look at like how miserable the world is, and it's like it's impossible to believe that we're here to enjoy ourselves. But you made it that way. We
Exactly.
made it that way. It doesn't
Mhm.
have to be like that. I mean, like, and people point to how miserable things can be in nature. It's like, oh, it's all animals eating each other, and it's all murder and death, and
Mm-mm.
suffering and cold. And but I mean that might be the case, but I mean that doesn't invalidate the fact that that we have the power to actually like create a good life for ourselves. you know
Absolutely. But then it also
um
goes towards perspective as well.
yeah. And so I guess I feel like shifting people back in this direction of like, stop seeing this divide between enjoying things in this
Mm.
world and some higher spiritual purpose that transcends like enjoyment. I'm thinking like, if you brought those two together, then like what if your desire to make this world a better place for yourself and other people
Mm.
had the same motive, like had a religious motivation to it that empowered people to make that happen. I
Mm.
guess that's kind of what I've been thinking about, I think, in my recent experiences. But I say that really just to kind of preface the fact that I believe that when you have these religious psychedelic experiences, you should do something recreational that you enjoy, but you should take a spiritual perspective towards that. You should,
Mm.
so I
Because that
really enjoy.
puts you in a comfortable space.
Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy watching movies recreationally, but then when I have like a recreational movie viewing that is within the context a religious psychedelic trip, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes a religious and recreational viewing, where it's like, I'm going to enjoy this, but I'm also here to learn and grow from this. I'm also here to, and so this fun adventure that I'm having, like this, because that's how I see it. I see the movie as kind of guiding me through
Mm-hmm.
like a space, that this journey that the movie is taking me on by bringing me into these rooms that are in my mind. Um, uh, that journey is it's going to be fun, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also going to teach me something. I'm going to learn something about myself or the world, from
Giving
that
yourself, yeah,
experience.
giving
And
yourself that space to
I
do
like the
that.
safety of it. I like the
Mm-hmm.
safety of, I'm just here in my apartment. I don't need to worry about actually being outside. you know
Mm-hmm.
um and I found that I really enjoy that, and that's kind of what I want to do. And I want to do like a mini one of those, like every
Mm-hmm.
week, like, like with like an edible or something, and you just
Mm-hmm.
watch one movie. But then for the mushroom ones, where it's like more of a special night, it's a double feature.
Nice.
um so yeah, that's kind of how I go about it.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing but intention in that. You know what I mean? It may sound recreational, but for you, it's very intentional. And I think
Yeah,
that's what's important about it.
yeah, absolutely. And it's fun. Like,
And
I
awesome. Don't
like,
forget to
even
have fun.
even if you come out of it and all you had, was fun, it's like, I needed that fun.
Exactly.
Like I
Exactly.
needed that to spiritually recharge.
Yeah, and
So
that, yeah, absolutely. Fun and laughter, totally
yeah.
parts of being healthy and happy. So,
I have this DVD collection over here, and I've been trying to find lesser known movies that are really good to trip to, because
so wait,
I
so you're
find,
watching it for the first time?
well, I think, no, I don't watch stuff for that. Like, I want
Oh,
that comfort of like
okay.
knowing what happens in it before I dive in.
Mhm.
But I like finding lesser known movies, because I want to be the one that like introduces it, like brings a friend into the room, like a
Yeah.
friend that, like, probably hasn't even heard of this movie, and I'm
Hmm.
gonna be like, this movie is great for tripping, like, trust me.
Hmm.
And then
Your
we
face
watch
is
we
gonna
watch
melt.
both of them together. Yeah, and then just like, I take them on this, like, amazing experience. Like, that's what I want. So like, I want to find those movies where like, it's like, you're not going, like, no other friend is gonna, like, know about this one, or show
Hmm.
you this one.
Oh
um
my gosh.
but um which is, I'm kind of overselling it, because a lot of the
I
ones that
mean,
a lot of the ones are not that obscure.
uh-huh.
It's just like,
It's
it's
just not popular for
yeah, it's
now.
like, I think if you went to most people's house and they pulled
Hmm.
out mushrooms, they'd probably put on Lord of the Rings. But like, I think that's like,
That's
you
too
know
intense.
but that's exactly it. It's like, no, you want the fantasy adventure aspect of Lord of the Rings, but you just don't know that, like, Stardust exists. Like the
Yeah,
2007 like
yeah.
Matthew Vaughn movie starring, like,
Yes.
the guy that stars in it. Like this, it's a fantasy adventure, but it's like, it's really light
Hmm.
and it's really fun. And I guess it's like, I want to be that person that kind of like knows exactly what makes this movie good, for this kind of
Hmm.
experience. I mean, last night I actually watched a more intense one that I probably wouldn't show to everyone,
Hmm.
but Watership Down, which,
I don't know what that one is.
it's so what I really liked about it is that it's an animated film that
Hmm.
is about, it's about rabbits. But it's not a children's movie. It's a movie for
Oh,
adults
I may have heard
about,
something about
yeah,
this.
it's a
Okay.
movie for adults, kind of like about, like, that imagines like what animal societies are like. And but like, it takes a lot of liberties, of course. Like, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of gets a little overly complicated with, like, how rabbit politics works. And so it's a
Mm-hmm.
little silly. It's like, oh, like, rabbits, aren't as like dystopian as this, but like, it's
Uh-huh.
obviously like trying to make a point about, like, human societies and everything. But like, I
Gotcha.
guess that was just a really trippy movie for me, because I'm just like watching it and thinking about like, whoa, like animals actually like do have societies and stuff like this. Like it doesn't look exactly like it does in the movie, but they do.
Yeah, you
Like
think
bees
about
have
that.
like, you know, entire kingdoms and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they live in that world and that's their world, and like we're kind of like on the periphery of their world. And
Yeah.
it's just like nuts to think that there's these other like consciousnesses, like there's these alien worlds like inside our own world.
Mm-hmm.
Um
Mm-hmm.
that just completely under our radar, and like how crazy is that? And
Have
just like, and I can, and when you're watching that movie, you can be in that world, you can be
yeah.
in like the rabbit world, and like
Mm-hmm.
see like what matters to them. And it's like, that's it's just so fun, like despite all like the
Mm-hmm.
flaws, because it definitely does have like some flawed elements. But
For sure. May I recommend something? And
yes,
it may not
go
be,
ahead.
and it may not be a
Recommend anything.
but it made me think about it when you said, where you're saying that the animals had, these little societies, or
Hmm?
there's like politics, but it's not a movie to watch on mushrooms maybe, but
Oh
you
boy.
decide. It's a documentary. But
Holy shit.
it's I don't know, it's kind of out there and it's kind of fun and plucky, but it got me really thinking. I watched it high once and I was like, holy fuck, I didn't realize dolphins are so amazing.
Oh, it's a
um
dolphin one.
so yeah, so the show is called camera and a spy, or spy and a camera, or something like that. But it basically goes into different animal habitats as an
Oh wow.
animal, and it just has like cameras, and it kind of just, because the animals act different when they see a photographer, or when they see like people around, or they're curious about people. But this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like coming in as like the animal, and you see animals kind of going about their, like, I don't know, rituals, or I don't know what you couldn't call them, but
Yeah.
it's really bizarre. Like, the one I was most blown away with were dolphins, and dolphins have this entire society. There's a hierarchy, and it's, I don't know, it's just incredible. I don't know.
Like that was the most intriguing thing about the movie, is like thinking to
Mm-hmm.
myself, it's like, oh my god, like it's so terrifying, like the idea that hierarchy like shows up again and again. And
It
like I
does.
started thinking about like, wow, like, you know, like what would an actually like good society like look like?
Mm-hmm.
Is there some kind of ideal that like we haven't achieved yet? And
Mm-hmm.
like and like I'm thinking like it's just like so hard to imagine that, like, because I think about like, oh, like I would love if it was like, you know, tiny little villages, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like, but then it's like, but then, like if they're all like, you know, if they're not like unified, then it's like they're so vulnerable to like war and just like, oh my
For
god, like
sure,
it's just
for
like so
sure.
much like rack your brain around,
Yeah,
like it's like
exactly.
I need to like go to school again and like get like a grad degree in like political science or something. But
Exactly.
yeah,
Oh my gosh. But yeah, I mean, it'll blow your mind.
it's
Maybe
a,
it's
yeah, it's a
it blew
fun
my
time.
mind, but
Yeah,
let me
yeah,
know.
for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
All right.
being here. It was
Yeah, it was a
a
pleasure.
blast. Do you want people to have your information, like Instagram or
Oh,
anything like
Twitter.
that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes,
Follow me
Twitter.
on Twitter.
Perfect.
I'm at headphones
Mhm.
underscore cat.
Headphones cat. Yes.
Yeah.
Got it. So follow, guys. Follow.
Yes, and on my I on my Twitter, I'm mainly like more of a movie person than a
Hmm.
psychedelics religion person. But
Hmm.
actually, that's my thing. Is that I believe that movies are kind of like church. Like that's what I'm doing. Movies are my church at this point, and like
Gotcha.
that's how I want to make movies. I want to make movies that feel kind of churchy, like, but like
Hmm.
in a good way, like in a pagan way. And so yeah, that, and so like I analyze movies kind of like through that lens, where I like I write about the movie that I watched that weekend, and then I
Hmm.
say like, here's what I discovered, you know, from this
Hmm.
like weekend, like, you know, movie ritual, and here's what I learned, you
Wait,
know,
so that's what you
in that
discuss in your
process.
Instagram?
I discussed that on my I make
I
blog
mean, I'm sorry,
posts.
in your Twitter.
I make blog posts on my Medium account, and then I post the links to that on my Twitter. So Twitter's a way for you to find the blog.
Why didn't
Um,
I know this?
yep.
It's like a movie club, like a
Yeah,
virtual
yeah.
movie
Like
club.
you can like read what I wrote.
I didn't know
I recently watched like 3 Pixar movies, so I think like the last movie that I wrote about was like
that.
Ratatouille or something. Or actually, the last one I wrote about
Pixar.
was Stardust, actually. So
Okay.
yeah.
I haven't seen that in
So
a
if you,
while. I have to rewatch that.
oh yeah, it's loads of fun. It's like it's one of my favorites. I think it's like one of my three
Yeah.
favorites of all time. I love fantasy. Like I love I love stuff that has like this like storybook feeling to it. And so like I was watching it on mushrooms, and like there was like one scene like where like this unicorn like comes in, and I'm just like,
Mhm.
this is my shit. This is my jam. There's unicorns. Yes.
I love it.
All right. All right. Well, I know you have something at 7, so you
Oh, I
have a
didn't
good evening.
realize. Oh,
Yep.
Gavin.
All right.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Peace.